Alright, what is going on, everybody? It's been a while since I created a tutorial, so I wanted to hop on here and create a new one, this time for Godot. Recently I've been working on a single-player FPS of my own, sort of inspired by old source games like Half-Life 2, Portal, that sort of stuff. And I created a weapon system for it, and I thought it was really neat. I don't see a lot of people talking about resource-based weapon systems or weapon systems specifically for 3D. In the description below there is a GitHub page that gives you access to the basic version of this scene that we're working with right now. It comes with the character controller, sound effects, gun meshes, literally everything you need to create the system is packed into it. So you guys can go down there and grab that and follow along with me, or I've made it pretty bare bones, this pack here, so you can pretty easily follow along and add it onto your own project. If you also are uninterested in learning about it a little bit and creating it yourself, there will also be the finished version, the complete version on my GitHub as well, if you want to go and download that just to start off your projects that way, sort of as like a little bit of a template. That is up to you. As I said before, this is resource-based. If you're unfamiliar with what Godot's resources are, I highly encourage you to check out the video linked below, or I'll put a card here. Godot's resources are like scriptable objects for Unity, I think is a good way of describing it. It's basically just your own little custom object that you can add all of the logic you want to it. They're super, super powerful. I use resources for just about everything, and my weapon system included. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started and just start with the resource itself. So whenever I'm creating a new resource system, I like to go and just create a new folder for all the resources. All right, and then in my resources, I will go ahead and add a new script, and I will call it gun resource. And so this will act as the template for all of our resources in the future, right? So we can go ahead and get rid of all this. Make sure you change this up here to say extends resource. And then we're going to give it a class name and call it gun. All right. And so we're going to want to bring in a couple of variables here. So for all these variables, you're going to want to start with export var. That allows it to us to edit it over here in the inspector. And for the first one, we're going to do type. And so this is going to be our weapon type, and then we're going to give it the type weapon type, right? And so then we're going to go over here and create an enum, and then call that gun type, right? With your enum here, we're going to be putting in all the different types of weapons that are in our game. Our melee weapon, our pistol, revolver, shotgun, rifle, SMG, whatever you're using, you're going to put that in here. And then so whenever we create a new weapon resource, we can just go ahead and pick it from a drop down. So let's add in all the ones that we're going to add in today. Let's do melee. I like to type them in all caps. All of my constants and enums are usually typed in all caps. It just helps me differentiate them in my code. Let's do a revolver. Revolver. I'm bad at spelling. Let's do shotgun, and then we'll do an SMG. Now that we have our type, let's go ahead and also export a couple more variables. So we're going to do ammo. And so this is going to be a string, and here's where we're going to type in the name of our ammo, what type of ammo our weapon uses. Go over here and do mesh. So this is where we'll be putting in our gun's mesh. and then cooldown. This will be the amount of time in between shots that our weapon can do. And let's set a default here for 0.2 seconds because this is in seconds, right? So we'll leave a note here in time in seconds. You can always change this later, of course. So now we're gonna also do weapon sway. This can be a hard-coded variable for you, but my system, I like it to be as dynamic as possible. So I like to put in, I like to be able to control the amount of weapon sway per weapon, and so that's what this variable is going to allow us to do. And then this last one is going to be variable automatic, and it's going to be a bool. We're going to set it to false. And so this tells us whether our weapon is an automatic weapon or not. Okay. And so next what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a new category of exports. And that's just to create, just to make it like a little bit easier for us to read in the inspector. And so in this sounds category, we're going to be adding in 3 different variables. It's going to be firing sounds. And this is going to be an array of audio streams, which in Godot are like MP3s, WAVs, you know, whatever, what have you. And then we're going to go ahead and create another export variable, and it's going to be called reload sound. It's going to be audio stream. And then another export variable, and it's going to be a dry fire sound. And it's going to be an audio stream again. This one, we're going to create a default one, a default dry fire sound. So go ahead and go down to the sound effects folder that you have in your project or the one that I provided in my project. And in here, you can go into the guns folder and you'll find a shot dry.wav, and we'll bring it in. And if you hold down control while you're dragging in something, it will automatically put in that like on ready or preload or whatever you need it to be. So that's good. So now we have a dry fire sound. Already hard-coded into the resource as the default, though, again, we can always change this later if we want. And then the very last thing we are going to be doing is we're going to be creating another category. This one is going to be called bullet stats. We have a couple variables to put in here. So the first one's going to be damage. This one's pretty self-explanatory. It's how much damage your weapon is going to do. And then we can do spread. So this is the amount in which your weapon spread, you know, your bullets will differentiate from each other when they get fired out of the gun, you know, how much they can spread out. Here we'll put in max mag. So this variable is going to be the maximum amount of bullets that you can have in your weapon at one time, so the maximum magazine size. And then this one here is going to be bullets amount. This is a hit scan weapon system, so we'll be using ray tracing. But with like shotguns and stuff, when you shoot a shotgun, multiple tiny little projectiles actually come out of the shotgun. It's not just one big unless you're using like a slug or something, but that's not the point. So the bullet amount is the amount of, I guess, quote unquote projectiles, because we're not actually using real projectiles, we're just using ray tracing, but the amount of projectiles per single shot, right? So if it's just a normal bullet, it'll just be 1, but if it's a shotgun, it could be like 5 or 10 or, you know, whatever. But we'll leave the default as 1 because most guns, it's just 1 bullet, you know, per shot, right? And so then for the last one, we'll go ahead and put in export var, and then we'll do bullet range. And this one's going to be an integer, and also we're going to put it at 40. This is the distance in, I think Godot measures in meters, but this is the distance in meters, I guess, which your bullet can travel before it stops, or i.e. a ray trace will go before it stops scanning. Now that you have all of these different variables for your gun, we're going to go ahead and in our resources folder, we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to call it, let's see here, we're going to call it guns. And then in here, going to right click that, create new, and then we're going to create a new resource. Let's search for a gun resource that we just created. Click that, and then go ahead and click the star to favorite it, because you'll probably be using this a lot if you plan on creating a lot of different guns. And then click create, then give it a new name. So this one will be our melee. Save, drop down, and we'll double click it. And then here, now you can see we have all of our different export variables over here. So for the ammo type, we're just going to put in basically whatever our gun type is, but in all lowercase. So here it's going to be melee, and you guys will see why later. We're going to be storing all of our ammo in a dictionary. And so this is basically our key for the dictionary. For our mesh, if you're following along with me, and you have, the base project that I provided, over here in game objects, under the guns folder, don't look in meshes, that's not what you need. It's going to be these four right here. These are our meshes. So we're gonna go ahead and put in our knife. So our melee weapon is a knife, and all these weapon meshes, it also includes the arms stuff, because we're gonna be making the animations procedurally in Godot instead of importing animations. Back to the inspector. So over here, we're gonna put in a cooldown of, let's make it 0.15 seconds. The sway, since it's just a knife, not a whole lot of weapon sway, and it's not gonna be automatic, so we're not gonna make it automatic. But you can basically do whatever you want here, whatever works best for your game. Specifically for the melee weapon, you can ignore the reload sound, because we're not really gonna need that later. For the firing sounds, the reason why we made this an array is because if you have the same sound playing over and over again, it sounds repetitive and it doesn't really sound very good. In games, whenever you shoot your gun, the actual sound that's made is picked from a list of compatible sounds with that weapon. So it breaks up the monotony of the sound. And so we're going to be doing the same thing, right? For the melee, it's actually over here in the main folder. It's called melee swing, and we're just going to be putting that in. Now this is only one sound, but that's okay. If you want to put in more melee sounds, you can sort of break it up. Basically, the more sounds, the better. But that's up to you. Over here in damage, let's just put something like 35. So this is going to be how many points of damage it does. Spread, we don't want the weapon to spread at all. Since this is a melee weapon, it's going to be an exact strike, right? Max mag, we're going to go ahead and put 1 here, and you guys will see why later. Bullet amount, 1. Bullet range. So if the range, this is going to be the range for our swing, and we don't want a really big range because, we're just swinging a melee weapon. So let's put something like 8, right? And you guys can play around with all these variables for your game. It's all up to you, right? Let's go ahead and create a couple more. We're going to create a revolver. Shotgun, and SMG. Alright, so in the revolver, let's go ahead and first things first, we're going to change the type to revolver. The ammo type is going to be revolver in all lowercase. We're going to want to change the mesh to the revolver. Cooldown, let's put it back to its default at 2. Sway, let's put it back to its default. That's fine. For the firing sounds, let's go down here to the sound effects. Shot pistol. We'll use that one. So now we got shot pistol in here. The reload sound, we will go ahead and use reload number 2. And then for the damage, let's go ahead and put in like 40, because we wanted to do, actually let's do 45. Revolvers are strong. We wanted to do more damage than the melee weapon, right? Maximum mag, this is a 6 shooter, so let's just do 6. And so this is how much we want the the bullets to spread. And so you don't want this to be a really high amount. Usually something like 1.25, that's what we're going to use for the revolver here, is a pretty decent, spray amount. You can play around with it. It's, whatever works best for you. But typically the weapon spread does not need to be terribly big. For the bullet range, let's go ahead and bump this up to like 60, so it can shoot up to 60 meters before it stops. And I believe that is the revolver done, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and do the shotgun now really quick. Change type to shotgun. And I hope you guys are seeing a pattern here. It's pretty simple. Mesh gets changed to shotgun. The cooldown, we'll go ahead and put this pretty high because you have to pump in between each one, right? We'll do weapon sway will be 2. It's a heavier weapon, so you're going to sway some more. It's still not automatic. Firing sounds, let's go ahead and swap out that one for the shotgun. Yep. Reload sound, let's go ahead and swap this one out for the reload shotgun. For the damage, now, shotguns do a lot of damage, right? But in games, shotguns, each projectile is measured by itself, right? And so our system's no different. For every raycast that we send out, it does the same amount of damage. So we don't, we want our shotgun to do a lot of damage, but only at close range when all of those projectiles are hitting, right? So we're actually going to put this kind of low, but keep in mind that the maximum amount of damage for a shotgun is its damage multiplied by the amount of bullets that you put into here. So let's just say, 6 little projectiles get shot out every single time you shoot your shotgun. That means that with a damage of 10, we actually have the opportunity of doing upwards to 60 damage if all of our projectiles hit, right? So for a maximum mag, let's go ahead and put 8. And then for the spread, shotguns spread a lot, so we'll put this pretty high at 2.25. And then shotguns have a pretty short range, so we'll do 40 meters. All right. And last one, let's do the SMG. Again, we're just changing this to SMG. And then we'll go ahead and swap out the mesh. Let's put the cooldown to, 0.12. Weapon sway, not a very big weapon. So we'll go ahead and put it to 1.8. This one is automatic, so let's click automatic. Firing sounds, and because this one's automatic, I actually have quite a few. I'm going to put in these rifle shots, and all 4 of them. I'm just going to go ahead and drop all 4 of these in. So now we have 4 different gunshots. You'll see how nice they actually end up sounding. And then reload sound, let's go ahead and do the reload SMG. And then for the damage, SMGs, I feel like in games typically don't do very much damage, so I'm going to do it the same way. Its spread is not going to be terribly big, but, not super small either. Max damage, or max mag, I'm sorry, it's going to be 30 because SMGs hold a lot of bullets. And then its range is going to be kind of short at 65 meters, just because I imagine SMGs more like close quarters and stuff, whereas like our assault rifle would have something crazy like 100 meters, right, and be like pretty accurate. But again, that's all up to you guys. Just go ahead and play around with it. And now we have all of our weapon resources finished. We have our melee, our revolver, our shotgun, and our SMG, right? And so those are the main guns that we're going to be making today, right? So let's go ahead and hop over to the player script. So in the player script, we're going to want to create a few things. First things first, we are going to want to create a few variables. Let's go down here to stats, make some room, and we'll go ahead and type in, let's leave a comment here so we know what these variables are for, guns. And so let's go ahead and make a few variables. This first one's going to be current gun, so it's going to be the gun that we currently have, and then make this of type gun. This is our custom resource that we just created, right? All right, and then we're going to make another variable called can shoot, make that a bool. By default, let's set that to true. Another variable called is reloading. Go ahead and make that a bool and set that to false. And then one more, we're going to put current bullets. So this is how many bullets we currently have. Set that to an integer, and we're going to go ahead and make that current gun dot max mag. So what this is doing is whenever we load up the game, it is setting our current bullets to equal the same amount of bullets that we can have in our mag it's basically going to fill our mag when we open the game. All right, and so now we want to drop in all of those resources that we just made. So if you go ahead and click, shift click on all of them, and drag them in, hold down Control, it'll go ahead and preload all of them as a constant for you. And so last thing we're going to make is the ammo dictionary I talked about earlier. So this is going to be of a type dictionary. Yeah. And so here, this is where that this ammo string comes in, because this ammo string is going to be acting as the key for this dictionary so we can get the amount of bullets that we're going to have, right? So let's go ahead and create one ammo type for each one of our weapons. So we'll have melee, and here we'll just have one, because while our melee doesn't actually use bullets, this system relies on the weapon having at least one bullet. And so when we set it up later, we're just going to make it so melee weapons specifically don't use bullets, right? They just, they basically have infinite bullets, right? And then we'll make another one called revolver. And then set up for like 200 by default, but I recommend later your default is not, 200 bullets. Or maybe that's what you want. I don't know. It's up to you. And then we're just going to create shotgun and SMG as well. So those are our 4 weapons that we created, and they're 4 ammo types, right? So now we need to go up here into project settings, go into input map, and so this is where we're going to be inputting our logic to shoot. So let's go ahead and create a new action, call it reload, add that in there, click plus, and then I'm going to set this to R, but you can set it to whatever you want, and then we're going to create another one called shoot, and set that to left mouse button. We also need to create gun slots, because to switch between weapons, we're going to be clicking 1, 2, 3, or 4. So let's go ahead here and create gun slot 1, gun slot 2, gun slot 3, and gun slot 4, right? And so set that accordingly. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So the way that I created this system, and I create a lot of my systems this way, is I make them so they are modular. Now, what does that mean? Because Godot is node-based, I can drag that node from my folders down here onto any entity, and then they will be able to use that logic in that node. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up here to our player scene, and we're going to click Add Child Node, and we're going to click Node, just a normal node. Go ahead and bring that towards the top and rename this Gun System. Right? And then down here in your folders, let's go create a new folder. We'll call this Systems. Right? And so right-click on your gun system and click Save Branch as Scene. Save it into your Systems folder. So this will be our gun system. Go ahead and add a script onto it, gun system. And then we can go ahead and get rid of all this logic for now. So when it comes to our shooting system, right, we are going to be using raycasts, right? We're not going to be spawning an actual physical projectile and then sending it forward. We're going to be using a raycast and basically just getting whatever the raycast is colliding with. So to do this, go ahead and go into our 3D scene so we can see everything here. And if you downloaded the project from my GitHub, this is what your 3D scene should look like right now. It'll have your world collision, your head, your camera, your hand, your arms, audio listener, and then also your HUD, right? On here, on the camera, let's go ahead and hide this hand right here. On the camera, we're going to go ahead and click on this and then add a raycast 3D. And I want you to rename this to something like Bullet Raycast 3D, right? Because this will be the raycast that we use for our bullets specifically. And then by default, make sure that this is set to not enabled, so disabled. Because we don't want this updating all the time. We only want this updating whenever we're actually shooting. I want you to take note of this right here. Depending on which way your character is facing. So this Z variable on mine is -40 because my character is facing this way, facing, the negative Z direction. But keep this in mind right now, which way your character is facing, right? Whether it be -Z, negative X, positive X, right? But anyways, so let's go ahead and set that to 0 for now. All right, so let's go ahead and go back to the player. And then in here, let's make a new area for our raycasts because we're gonna have more than one, but let's just start out with the first one. Let's go ahead and drag this in, hold down Control, and just rename this to like Bullet Raycast, right? Something simple they can easily remember. All these variables that we just created, your guns variables, and your raycast, you're gonna want to make sure that any entity that you want to have this gun system that we're about to create, you want it to work on them. You want to make sure that they have all these same variables as well, right? And you'll see why. And then let's go ahead and also, before we get started, add in another area here, and we'll just go ahead and call this system nodes. So this will be all of our like modular systems that we create. We're only creating one today, the gun system, but if you want to do the same thing in the future, this will be the place to put them. And so our gun system here, I'm just going to rename this to gun for simplicity, but this is our gun system right here. All right, so now we get to finally actually do some real programming. Go ahead over here and go ahead and click on the little movie icon here because we want to bring up this actual scene. And in here, we're going to create a timer. And we'll go ahead and just call this cooldown timer. We'll need that for later. So go ahead and go into your gun system script. I don't know why this is not connected. Make sure it's connected. All right, go into your gun system script, and we're going to be adding in two things. So first is going to be an export variable called parent, and then this is going to be a character body 3D. And so now before we do anything else, we're going to go back into our player script, click on our gun system, and then over here in the inspector you'll see there's a new parent export. We're going to go ahead and assign that to the player, right? And then we're going to be dragging in this timer in the gun system script, and on ready var, we'll just call it cooldown timer. That's fine. All right, and now we want to create one last variable, and we're going to call it current gun, and then set this as type gun, right? Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and create a function to shoot the gun. Now, if you go into the game right now, we don't have a current gun set. Sorry. Let's go ahead and set our current gun to one of these preloads. We'll just go ahead and make it the revolver, right? That's fine. Okay. So if you go ahead and open up this scene, you'll see that we cannot shoot, even though you created the input map, we can't shoot or anything. The first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set the current gun in our gun system script to match the current gun variable of our parent. And that's just to make it so we don't have to continuously type this out every time. We can just put current gun. Make sure you spell it correctly. First thing we want to check is if the player can shoot is equal to true, and the parent's current bullet, so the amount of bullets that you currently have, is greater than 0. Because we don't want to be able to shoot the weapon if we don't have any bullets in it, right? And so then we're going to go ahead and create a variable called current bullets. And it's going to be an array of a dictionary, right? So we're going to be creating dictionaries here. Along with it, we're going to want to create a new function called function get bullet raycasts, and just pass this for now. We don't need it for right now. Next, we want to check to make sure that our current gun is not a melee weapon. Because if our gun is not a melee weapon, when we shoot, we're going to subtract 1 bullet from our current bullets, right? So let's say we have 10 bullets in our gun, and we shoot, we want to then have 9 bullets in our gun. But if it's a melee weapon, again, we want our melee weapon to have infinite ammo, so we're not going to subtract any. And then we're going to start our cooldown, right? We're going to be setting parent can shoot to false, because now we don't want the player to be able to shoot anymore, right? Because now they've officially shot their gun. So we want them to stop from shooting until the cooldown is over. And so then we're going to be calling our cooldown timer that we created before, and we're going to be feeding it the cooldown time from our weapon resource, right? So over here in our revolver, let's say for example, we have a cooldown of 0.2 seconds, right? And because we got our current gun earlier, we can feed this cooldown variable into the timer. So now, if we're shooting with revolver, the timer is going to go for 0.2 seconds. Next, we want to play the gun sound effect. I have a sound manager built in to this project already if you're following along with the template that I gave you. But if you're creating your own, this is where you'll put in, your sound effect however you do it. And the way that we're getting the sound effect is we're creating a new audio instance on the parent, so on the player or the entity that's shooting. And we're picking a random sound from our array of firing sounds from the weapon resource, right? So remember how I said before we don't want to have, just the same sound playing over and over and over and over again? This will be picking a random one every time to kind of break up the monotony and make it sound a little bit better. So we check to see if we can shoot, and if we have any bullets, then we check if the gun is a gun, not a melee weapon, and then we subtract the bullet, and then we start the cooldown and play the sound effect. Now, since I said before, I want this system to be able so I can literally drag and drop it onto entities like enemies or NPCs and stuff so they can shoot as well, we have to make sure that we have some player-only functions in here, right? So this is where your recoil animations are going to go, and where you're going to put updating the HUD. Now, in the global auto load for this project that I created, I have a signal that's called update HUD. And if we go into our HUD, let's go ahead and connect it. Global.updateHUD.connect, and then we'll just put on update HUD, and then make that a function. If we're the player, we want to do these things. We want to, have the recoil animation play, and we want to update the player's HUD. And so this is me playing our recoil animation. And like I said before, our recoil animation is baked into our player arms that I have provided for you here to be super clear on what's happening. So on our player, we have our hand and we have our player arms, right? So our player arms is what holds our gun, right? And so if we go into here, this node, this has a mesh for our gun or our arms. In my case, it's both. And then it also has an animation player where we have 2 animations. We have recoil and reload, right? And we'll come back to these a little bit later. But for now, our gun system is basically saying, after we play the sound, update the player's HUD, and play the recoil animation. This is where we now want to work on our bullets. Let's go ahead and create our bullets, our projectiles, do our raycasts, so to speak. Again, we're going to be setting our current gun to equal parent gun just to make sure that we're on the same page at all times. And then in our get bullet raycasts, again, that function that we created earlier for this dictionary, or for this array, we're going to be creating a couple variables. First one is going to be variable bullet raycast. And then this is going to be equal to our parent dot bullet raycast. And again, this is that raycast that we created earlier. Where is it? Right here. So a raycast on our player that we created earlier. And then we're going to be creating a new array called valid bullets. So this is going to be tracking all of our raycasts that actually hit something. Oops. Array. and then this is going to be an array of dictionaries, right? First thing we want to do is we want to get the amount of bullets in our current gun. So for, I guess, per shot, right? Our projectiles, as I mentioned before. So on our shotgun, this is 6. We have 6 projectiles that are being shot out. So we're doing basically 6 different sets of raycasts. So we're going to do a for loop. For B, this is our bullet, in our current gun dot bullet amount, again, this 6 or 1 or whatever it is for you, we are going to be first getting the spread amount. Let's go ahead and make some room here. We're first going to be getting the spread amount, so the amount in which our weapon has spread. So we're going to be creating 2 variables, spread x, this is how much it spreads on the x direction, on the x-axis, and spread y, this is how much it spreads on the y. It'll pick randomly from a range, and in the range is going to be our bullet spread times -1 to create the negative, to get the negative version of it. So if your spread is 1.25, this will be -1.25. And then the actual bullet spread, which is 1.25, right? So that means our spread on the x-axis can be anywhere between -1.25 and +1.25. And then it's going to be the exact same thing down here with spread y, just it's going to be in the y direction, right? Next, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set the spread. So now we've gotten the spread amounts, and so we want to set the spread. So for our bullet raycast, we want to cast its target position to be our spread x, and then our spread y, and then we want to feed it our bullet range, you know, how far the bullet's going to go on our z. Now this is why it's so important that you know which direction that your character is facing. My character is facing, we go back, the -z direction, right? So that means in our gun system, when we're feeding it the range for our bullet, we're going to be feeding it the bullet range in the negative, right? So we're going to be creating the negative version of the bullet range. We're going to want to get all of our collided data. So this is going to be a bunch more variables. First things first, we're going to want to force our raycast to update. When your raycast in Godot is disabled, you can't just do enabled true and then get all the data and then do enabled false, because it doesn't really update, because raycasts update on tick, right? So we're going to want to force the raycast to update and then get all of its data. So the first one is going to be our hit target, so what we hit. And so that's going to be our raycast.getCollider. And then we want, so the point on which the person or the wall or the ceiling that we hit. And so we're going to be doing, raycast.getCollisionPoint. And then last, we're going to want to get our collision normal, right? So this is the direction in which the normal is facing at the point of collision, right? And so think of every piece of geometry having like a little arrow pointing directly out from its face. That's its normal. And so we want to get the direction in which it's facing so we can add our decals in later. This is what these two are for, basically, is for decals later on. So once we've gotten all this data, we want to then store all the data, right? So we're going to be creating dictionaries to store this data. So first things first, we're going to check to make sure that we actually hit something. Because if we hit no, we don't want to have to store any data because we didn't actually hit anything. It doesn't matter. But if we hit like a wall or an entity or like a friendly or whatever, we want to store that. You're going to want to make sure that you check if hit target does not equal null. And then you're going to want to create a new dictionary called valid bullet. And then in this dictionary, there's going to be 3 keys. And they're just going to match these variables that we created before. And you're going to feed them their variables. So hit target, collision point, and then collision normal. Very simple. And again, this is literally just us storing that data that we just got. You want to add this valid bullet to the array of valid bullets that we just created, right? So for every shot that you made, so let's say it's a shotgun, let's say 2 out of the 6 actually hit something. That means the 2 valid bullets that hit, we're going to be then adding to an array so that we can, calculate the damage and stuff later on. And then last but not least, we want to return our array of valid bullets. And now this function's done. But the reason we're returning the array of valid bullets is because up here, remember, in shoot, we ran this was the first thing we did, is we got all these raycasts. And so now our valid bullets array up here in our shoot function is the same as this array down here in the get bullet raycasts function, right? So now we can go ahead and continue in our shoot function. This is where we calculate damage and stuff. So first things first, we're going to check if we have any valid bullets in our array. If we don't, if our array is empty and we hit nothing, our shooting is done, and we'll just skip to setting the player back to being able to shoot again or whatever, right? But if it's not, if we do have valid bullets, for each valid bullet that we shot, so this is where you'll be testing to see if the hit target is an enemy, and then if it is, this is where you're going to put how you want to handle that. You want to do, you want to lower their health, you want to free them, whatever. But again, this is check if is enemy, and then here her / damage / kill enemy, whatever it is. You can copy and paste what I do here if you understand it and this is how you want to handle it, or just put in your own logic. But anyways, so now next thing we want to do is decals. Now we haven't created our decals yet, so let's go ahead and do that. In our game objects folder, go ahead and right click and then create a new folder, and we'll just call this decals. Then up here we're going to add a new scene. It's going to be 3D scene, and then we're going to rename this to bullet decal. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and add this to a new node group. So we're going to call this decal global. We want it to be a global group, decal, right? And you'll see why later. This is so we can free decals that are not being used, right? And I do realize that there is a decal system for Godot. I personally think that this one is a little bit easier for using, for creating bullet holes specifically, but the decal system is amazing for adding textures onto like buildings and all sorts of stuff like that. But for now, this is how we're doing our decals for the guns here. If you want to do it a different way, totally up to you. Next thing we want to do is we want to create a mesh instance 3D. And then for the mesh, we're going to be adding a new quad mesh, right? And here, click on it and then go down to material, create new standard material, and just set it to something kind of dark. So we'll set the albedo to something pretty dark here. All right, that's all we need to do there. Next, we're going to click on our mesh distance 3D, or mesh instance 3D, and then we're going to go down to geometry, and then turn the cast shadow off, so our decals aren't casting any shadows. And then we're going to go down to transform, and set its rotation to -180 degrees. It's going to disappear. That's okay. It's right on the other side. And then over here for the position, put its Z position to -0.01. Just so it's not clipping with, whatever surface it gets spawned on. And then go ahead and save it. We're going to be saving it in our game objects, decals, bullet decal. All right, cool. So now we have a bullet decal. Go ahead, and if you have some sort of global auto load, in mine, in the project that I provided, there is a global auto load. In your global auto load, go ahead and create a reference to this bullet decal. So it's just called bullet decal. Now, we're going to go back to our gun system, and this is where we are going to be spawning our decal, right? So first things first, we got to actually create the thing. So we're going to create a new bullet, and then we're going to instantiate that reference to the bullet decal that we just created in our global script. Now this has to be an auto load, otherwise it won't be able to find it. Unless you just want to put it in here, that's fine too. You're going to be adding this new decal as a child of your target, of whatever object you hit, whether that be the wall, the floor, an entity, whatever. And then finally, you want to set the transform of that bullet, the global transform origin of that bullet, decal, to the collision point that we gathered earlier when we did our raycast. Now, the thing is that just because we added it and we put it in the right spot doesn't mean it's facing the right direction. So that's where that normal that we grabbed in earlier was. And so in this script here, we are matching the decal's direction to the direction of the normal that we got. So we're going to be checking if the collision normal is, we're going to be checking the direction of the collision normals against a vector 3. And then we're going to be telling our bullet to look at the collision point plus the normal. So it'll be looking at a space just above it, basically, to make sure it's always facing the right direction, right? So if you don't care about your decals like despawning after a certain amount of time or whatever, you can just leave it here. Your shooting script is done. However, I wanted, in the spirit of all things Source Engine and the game that I'm creating, I wanted to make it so whenever you shoot your guns, there's sort of like a max decals that exist, and make it so if you go above that max decal, then older ones start disappearing. So I have an auto load called Game Settings, and in this Game Settings auto load, this is where I keep track of everything from mouse sensitivity to head bob to max decal amounts and all that. So if you want the same thing, go ahead and create, you can do this in your global auto load or whatever, it just needs to be an auto load so you can access it easily. But this is in my game settings. So I created two variables, one called a max decals. So this is the amount of decals that we can spawn in a scene. This doesn't include, ones that you manually place in like the editor when creating your map or whatever. This is just, ones that are spawned through like blood or bullets or whatever. So this is the maximum amount of decals that we can spawn. And then this is an array of all the spawn decals we've had, right? So back into the gun system, we're going to go ahead and add this decal to the array that we created in our game settings. And then from there, we're going to check, every time we add a new one, we're going to check to see if that one pushed us over our max allotted decals, right? So we're going to check if the size of the array, if the amount of items in the array is greater than the maximum amount of decals that we're allowed to have, then we are going to get rid of we're going to free from the scene the oldest decal that was in that array, and then we're going to be removing the reference to it from the array itself, just so we don't call over it over and over again. And now it's done. Go ahead and open it up the game. If you click, still can't shoot, right? Well, that's because we haven't actually hooked it up to our shoot mechanism yet. So go ahead and go back into your player script. And so this is something instead of putting in the input function, we're actually going to be putting it in the process function, right? We're going to be having two different types of shooting. We have automatic shooting and we have semi-automatic shooting. In the process function, go ahead and add in this here. So if your input is action just pressed, shoot, our shoot button from earlier, this is left click for me, and your current gun is not automatic, ignore this, this is just for my setting to check if menus are open or whatever. But if your current gun is not automatic, then we're just going to be shooting it once, right? This action just pressed only gets sent off if you click it once, or if you click it, right? If you hold it down, it doesn't register anymore, right? And so this is why we're doing it for our semi-automatic. But this is for our automatic weapon if action is pressed. So if it is currently pressed, not was just pressed, but is currently pressed, we're going to double check and make sure that our gun is automatic. And if it is, we're going to run the shoot function again. And so this allows, us to use the same shooting logic, but it does it based off of whether the gun is automatic or not, right? And with all this ready, the very last thing that you want to do, go back to gun systems, and then go back to this cooldown timer, click on it, click node, and then go over to its signals, and then on timeout, connect its timeout, and then we are going to make sure that we set parent can shoot back to true. So whenever the cooldown is over, you can then shoot again, right? And then go ahead and open it up. All right, and now that we're out of bullets, You know, obviously our UI is not updating because we haven't hooked up everything, but you can see that you can now shoot. So let's go ahead and do a couple things. First things first, let's go ahead and hook up our UI. So again, in our gun system script, let's see here, we can go ahead and hide that and hide that. In our gun system script, remember we called global.update HUD if the entity that's shooting is a parent, right? So now we gotta actually hook this up to something. So if you're following along with me, you can go ahead and open up the HUD in the UI HUD menu over here. And this is what your HUD minimally needs to follow along with us. So over here, I have a ammo count label, and I have a label for the health count, right? And so right now they just have default values in them that don't change, but we're going to change it so they update dynamically. So go ahead and get references to both of these labels, your ammo count and your health count. And then we're going to be getting a reference to our player. So in my global script, I have a player reference, right? I have a reference to the player. And then whenever the game starts, the player sets the player.global reference to itself. So we always have a reference to the player. So in my HUD, I can just set our player reference in the HUD to be the same as the global.player ref. Easy. The next thing we want to do is check to see what type of gun we have here. So here, we're going to be setting the visibility of the ammo count label based off of whether we have a melee weapon equipped or not. Because if we have a melee weapon equipped, we don't want to be able to see the ammo count label because it doesn't matter to us. So next what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set our label, right? So our ammo count label dot text equals, in quotes, we're going to be putting %s/%s, right? Because what this is going to allow us to do is going to allow us to replace these %s's with variables that we set over here. So we're going to do another %sign. And then brackets. We're going to be feeding, so this first one here, this first placeholder, we want this to be set as our player current bullets, how many bullets we currently have, right? And then this next placeholder here, we want this one to be our player ammo, right? And then we're going to be feeding it, this is our player ammo dictionary, right? We want to feed it the ammo type of our current gun so we can get the correct number of bullets that we have for that ammo type, right? And then if you have your, if you have like health in your game or whatever set up already, you can go ahead and just put that there. Set it up pretty much the same way, player health and max health. All right. So now let's go ahead and go into game and see if this is updated. See, down in the bottom right, see, you can see that our default amount of bullets is 200, and whenever we shoot, another one goes missing. So now we can shoot all we want. But we can't reload. Let's go ahead and add in reloading now. But before we do that, I gotta fix this bullet decal. It is irritating me. It is so big to like point. Oh, maybe that's a little bit too small. But yeah, that's a lot more reasonable. So our gun system. Let's go ahead and go back to our gun system, and we are going to be creating our reloading functions now. We're going to be doing this with the fact in mind that our function is going to be usable for both players and entities, right? So the first thing we're going to do is going to do func reload. And then, like with the other ones, we're going to be setting our current gun to our player's gun. And then we're going to be checking if the current gun type is not a melee gun. Because if it is a melee gun, or if it's a melee weapon, a knife, a crowbar, you know, whatever it is, we don't want to reload it, right? No reason to. It should have infinite bullets. Next, what we check is if it is not a melee weapon and it is a gun, we're going to check if the player's gun is missing any bullets, right? Parent.current bullets, so the amount of bullets we have, is less than the maximum amount of bullets our gun can have, right? And if it is less than the maximum amount of bullets our gun can have, we will go ahead and set it so our parent cannot shoot and that we have begun our reloading. So next, let's go ahead, do our player only part of the function, right? So if the player's name is equal to player, then we want to check to see if the player has more than 0 ammo for this gun's ammo. So let's say that we're using the shotgun. We want to make sure that we have more than 0 shotgun shells to put into our shotgun, right? And if we don't, then we just ignore everything. But if we do, we're going to be doing a reload animation and playing our reload sound effect. Now, our reload animation, let's go ahead and hook that up, because so far we haven't actually hooked that up. So let's go over to the player arms, and this is all dependent on how you want to handle your reloading and all that stuff. But for me, this is how we're doing it in my game. So we want to go over to our player arms that I've provided for you. Go ahead and click on the script, and then click Create Player Arms. So in our player arms script, we're going to be wanting to get references to our arm mesh, so our gun mesh, and our animation player. And this animation player, if you are again using the file that I provided, it has a reload and a recoil animation already built into it. Next, we're going to want to get a signal called reload, and this is what we'll be using to make sure that our reload is finished. But next, we're going to want to do, we're going to want to make a function called function play gun animation. And then in it, we're going to have 2 arguments that we call. The animation name, and this will be a string. Oops. This will be a string. And then the speed, scale, and this will be a float. And by default, we'll just go ahead and set this to 1 so we don't need to set it every time. First thing you want to do is you want to stop any animation that is currently playing every time you play a new one. Then next, you want to set the animation player's speed scale to equal the same speed scale that we fed into it, right? And then last, we want to play the animation that we just fed into it, right? So the animation name. And so this is where you'll put the name of the animation, reload or recoil, right? Last but not least, we want to create another function called reload. And then in here, we'll just put reload.emit. Or I guess let's call this reload finished, because it's going to get mad at us if we don't. Alright, reload finished. Now, your reload animation, you want to make sure that whenever you, and I'll just get rid of this so we can see how we do it. So this is my reload animation, right? At the very end of your reload animation, you want to go ahead and add a tract, call method tract, and then double click on your player arms or wherever you have your script. And so now it'll allow us to call a function during the animation. So we're going to right click, insert key, and then we're going to call our reload finished function. So when our reload is finished, or reload animation is finished, it's going to call this function to emit this signal. All right, so let's go ahead and hook up this function now, or this signal rather. So because we're calling it from one of the player's children, we want to make sure that the player is actually ready before we try and hook up this signal. Otherwise, we're going to get some issues. So go into your gun script, and in here, we are going to create a new function called player ready. And we're going to check if parent.name is equal to player. So if this node right here at the top of your player's body or whatever is named player, then we are going to go ahead and connect the signal that we just made. So it's going to be parent.playerArms.reload.connect, and then we're going to pass in a new callable, which is a new function called player reload. So let's go ahead and create that real quick so it's not yelling at us. All right, so now whenever we finish reloading, this function is called, right? So, or finish our reloading animation, this function is called, but this isn't working right now, and that's because we need to go into our player script, and in our ready function for our player, we want to go ahead and call this function. So gun.player ready. Oops. You want to make sure you spell it right. But now it will actually connect the function when our player is ready. It will then connect the signal. So now we got to create the reload function for the player, and this is for the player specifically. First things we're going to want to do is going to want to double check and make sure that our current gun is set to the parent gun. Most of the functions in this gun system, you want to make sure that you set that first, just to make sure that you're not accidentally using the wrong gun type or something. So then next, what you want to do is we're going to be creating a couple variables. So we're just kind of call this ammo var. So for this first variable, we're going to call it ammo amount. And so this is going to be the amount of ammo that we currently have for our equipped weapon type, right? Parent.ammo current gun.ammo, right? And so, like I said, we're setting this variable to equal the amount of ammo that we have for the equipped weapon. And then for this one, we're going to be doing variable missing ammo. So this is the amount of ammo that we've shot from our magazine. And this is going to be equal to current gun.maxMag minus parent.current bullets, right? Our missing ammo is going to be equal to our maximum magazine, so let's say like 30, minus the amount of bullets that we currently have left, let's say 10. So if our mag can hold 30 bullets, but we only have 10 left, that means we are missing 20 bullets. So that's what this variable is. And then the next thing we're going to want to do is we are going to want to create a match statement, right? And create a little bit more room. Barely see. All right. So we're going to want to create a match statement. So match the ammo amount is greater than or equal to the current gun.maximum mag, right? And so this will be returning true or false. So we are checking. So we are checking to see if the player has enough ammo to fill the magazine of your gun. Because if they don't, we don't want to be spawning and creating extra bullets for the player. We want to make sure that they're only putting the amount in that they have left, right? So if it's true, if we do have enough ammo to fill the mag, we're going to be filling the mag. And we're going to be doing that with parent.current bullets equals current gun.maxmag. So we're just going to be filling our current bullets back up to the maximum amount of bullets that we can have in our magazine. And then we're going to be setting it so parent.ammo, and then we're going to be passing in our current gun's ammo type. So the current amount of ammo that we have will be minus equal the missing ammo. So the amount of bullets that we were missing from our gun. Why are we mad? Current gun. There we go. Again, back to that analogy earlier, if we have, let's say, 100 SMG bullets, but we are missing 20 SMG bullets from our mag, we want to make sure that we are subtracting those 20 SMG bullets that we're putting back into our mag from the total amount of ammo that we have, just to make sure we're not creating extra bullets or anything. All right, So now, what happens if we don't have enough bullets to fill our magazine, right? So we want to partially fill the mag, or if we have no bullets at all, that will still land under this umbrella, right? So we're going to want to do parent.current bullets plus equals parent.ammo current gun.ammo, right? So we are going to be wanting to get the total amount of ammo that we have left for this gun type, and we're going to want to be adding that to the amount of bullets that we currently have, right? And then we're going to be doing parent.ammo and then getting our current ammo type, current gun.ammo. And then we're just going to be setting it to 0 because we just used the last of our ammo to fill the magazine. Last thing we want to do is we want to allow the player to shoot, and we want to update our HUD. So we're going to be setting parent.canShoot to true and parent.is reloading to false because we are no longer reloading. We just finished. Now we want to be able to shoot again, and then we're going to update our HUD to reflect all of this, right? Go to our player script, and let's go ahead and set up our reload functions, right? So in our player script, find its input function, and here we are going to put if event, so if our input event is action pressed reload, so the reload button that we set in our input map earlier, we set it to R. This right here is basically just a quick function for me to check to see if any menus are open, like the pause menu or whatever. I mean, you can leave this out, that's totally fine, it'll still work the same, but this is a good time to add in this check to make sure that your pause menu or whatever, if you have one, isn't open. Because you don't want your player to be able to like reload and shoot and stuff while they're in their pause menu, unless you do, that's up to you. You can leave this out, that's totally fine, it'll still work, but if you want to make sure that the pause menu, that they are not able to do this during the pause menu, alright, and then here we're just going to go ahead and call that gun.reload function that we just created. So now we can go ahead and test it in game, run around and stuff, and shoot, and then press R to reload. Nice. Alright, so as you can see in the bottom right, our reload is changing properly. Sweet. And so let's just leave like 1 in there. So now we should subtract 5 from the 194 because we can have a maximum of 6. Perfect. All right, so it's working great. It's working great. All right, so the last thing we want to do is we want to bring in all of the other weapons that we have. And again, earlier we set up those gun slot buttons, gun slot 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's go ahead and create the functions for those. And so they're all going to be pretty much the exact same. In your input function, let's go ahead and make a bunch of space here. So first one is going to be if event.isActionPressed gunslot _1 and is reloading equals false. And this is also, again, a good time to put in the check for menus, right? We're going to be calling a new function called switch melee. And so we can go down here all the way to the bottom of our script and create this new function. We'll put this under like an actions section. We'll call switch weapon. And here we'll just get the new weapon. And this will be a string, or I guess, hold on. What do we pass up here? We passed in the actual weapon itself. So over here, down here, we'll just pass in type gun, because that's what it is. This new weapon is going to be the guns from before. So the gun resources that we made, these preloads up here, right? We're going to create a couple more of these. So 4 in total, I think is what we had. And then we're just going to be changing gun slots numbers. And then we'll change it to what slot we want everything. So we'll put the revolver in this one, the shotgun in number 3, and then the SMG in number 4. First thing we want to do is make some extra space here, right? You know, we do not have enough space. All right, so the first thing we want to do is check if our new weapon is equal to our current gun. So if our new weapon is equal to our current weapon, we just want to return. We don't want to do anything, right? Because we don't want to be like trying to switch out a weapon if, you know, we already have it. But if it's not, we're just going to go ahead and continue with the rest of the script. So we're going to go ahead and add the bullets back to total ammo count. Because if you have bullets in your gun already, you want to make sure that those bullets are being added back to your total ammo count. Because when they get reloaded, they get removed from your total ammo count. So if you don't add them back, they just disappear forever. So we want our ammo. I'm going to pass in our current gun.ammo to plus equal current bullets. All right, so now we've added them back, and then our current bullets is going to equal 0. So now we have none left. Now we want to switch our gun resource, right? All we really need to do here is go ahead and set our current gun to equal our new weapon, the weapon that we passed up here, right? And then next we want to set our mesh, right? It's because each one of these resources has a mesh attached to it. So this is where if you have like special logic for swapping out your gun model, this is where that will go. But for me in this system, if you're just following along with the template that I left in the description, this is where we're just going to be swapping out the mesh of the weapon, right? So let's go back to our player arms because we need to actually create a function that allows us to do this. Okay, and this function is just going to be called update mesh. And then we're going to give it an argument called new mesh, and it's going to be an array mesh because that's what our weapon types are. And so then we're just going to change it so this onReady var up here, this arms mesh that we have, it is a mesh instance 3D. So this mesh instance 3D, we're going to be setting its mesh to equal the new mesh that we just passed it, right? Then back to our player. So now we actually have to call that function, right? So we're going to do player arms dot update mesh, and then we're going to feed it the mesh of our current gun, the one that we just set right here. So we're just going to be set in-game mesh. All right. I need more room. All right. So now we could just call our reload function here if we wanted, but I don't personally want the gun to reload every single time we switch it. I just wanted to already have a full mag in it when I switch to it, right? So we're going to do load bullets into new gun. And from here, we can actually pretty much just copy the logic that we put in for our character reload. This match statement, we can just take this, right? Because it's doing the exact same thing as before. You know, we want to make sure that it's not, you know, putting in too many bullets or not enough bullets or whatever. So we can just put in that match function that we wrote in our gun system script in here. Now we are going to have to change it a little bit because we do not have ammo amount. We want to change out this ammo amount for our ammo in our script here, like this dictionary, right? We want to search this dictionary for our current gun's ammo type. So we want to check to see if, and that's basically all we did here. We just did it with a variable instead. So it's pretty much the exact same thing. We are going to check to see if we have enough ammo to fill the weapon. If we do, we're going to fill the weapon. And again, the only change here is we need to just get rid of these parent signifiers. Right? We just need to get rid of those parent signifiers. And the last one here, this missing ammo. Well, we're not going to have any missing ammo. Well, technically, we're missing all the ammo. So we can just go ahead and feed in our maximum mag account. Because our mag is at 0 right now. We have 0 bullets currently. we're just going to be filling a mag completely. So if a mag has 30 bullets but we have 0, we can just go ahead and put in the whole mag, right? So now all we need to do is go ahead and update, if I can spell it, update our HUD. And so again, if whatever logic you're using to update your HUD, put it right there. And then now we should be able to switch our weapons. Right. So right now our default weapon is still, what is our default weapon? Let's go ahead, put our current weapon. Yes, okay, our current gun is our revolver, right? So let's go ahead and press 1. Oh, there's our knife. And if we, it's got its own sounds and everything. Can't reload it because it's the knife. What about shotgun? You can see our ammo count down the bottom right. It's drifting away, but you can still see it. And you can see here, it's got the 6 bullets that the shotgun should have, right? And then we can reload it. Our SMG here, it's automatic, right? So we can reload this too. And if we go ahead and switch back to a weapon, it's, you know, we have a full mag with it, right? But I hope you guys like this weapon system. I hope it works well for you, and that, you know, it works well for your game. Like I said before, I personally have not seen a lot of people creating resource-based weapon systems, especially not for 3D. And I think it's a shame. I think it's actually really cool and a neat way to use resources. And so I wanted to kind of show off how mine works. I hope that this was somewhat easy to integrate into your own projects, or at least to give you an idea of how to integrate it into your own projects as like a whole breakdown of how I did it. And again, you can get the fully completed code on my GitHub. There's going to be a link to that in the description. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions or any ideas for a future tutorial that you'd like to see, please go ahead and let me know. And I will see you guys all next time. Bye.